And welcome again, Bernie Martin. It's so wonderful to have you for this CF Masterclass as we travel around the world and talk to CF parents. You did a podcast with us before on the Living with Cystic Fibrosis podcast, and this CF Masterclass is a great way to give everybody around the world an idea of what life is like for people across the country who have a child with cystic fibrosis and how things are different in each country. You're a writer, a creative consultant, and you are the mother of Eva, who has cystic fibrosis, and also of Danny. Did I right?
Yeah, Danny
Yes,
is correct.
Danny,
Yeah, Danny
and
and
your
Eva.
husband is Dave.
Dave,
Yay.
correct.
Yeah. So, and you're a really creative person, which I love. I guess the first thing, if you want to tell everybody, is what is life like in Ireland when you have a child with cystic fibrosis?
Things are pretty good here, I have to be honest. We're pretty lucky. It wasn't always that way, though. There have been huge changes over the last few years. I suppose since 2017, things have really improved with the introduction of Orkambi at that time. And subsequently, we now have funding for Kaftrio, or Trikafta, as you call it in the States. We're also in the process of building a new children's hospital, which is going to be a game changer for all pediatric patients across the country. It was meant to be open, I think, last year. It has been delayed till 2025. But I suppose despite that, there are huge improvements in the last kind of, 8 years or so. My daughter is 11, so I've seen the difference even since she was diagnosed in what we have access to and what's coming down the line. Some of it is still just a promise in terms of hospital facilities, but it's nearly there. I suppose hospital facilities are probably currently our biggest challenge for the pediatric CF population, in that, in Dublin, care is split across three different CF centres. So we have Temple Street Hospital, Crumlin, and Tala. And so they all have their own outpatient departments and own consultants and CF nurses who are amazing people. But the challenge we have is when any of our kiddies need to be admitted for inpatient care. That's where the system lets us down here. We just don't have the capacity that we need for our CF patients to be taken care of safely. It can be a struggle to get a single room. You could be waiting to get a bed. You might need to do home IVs because you can't get a bed. There are a lot of challenges there, but the Children's Hospital will alleviate those. But it was quite a controversial project, I suppose, in that it ran over hugely budget and time wise in terms of when it was supposed to open. So it's disappointing that we don't have it yet, but at least it's coming.
That is exciting that it's coming. And I remember even before I talked to you, talking to a dad who at the time, and this was years ago, had a 6-year-old son, and he was thinking, I might have to leave
Yeah.
Ireland because there was not access to the medications that we had here in the United States. And even 8 years ago for you, that must have been a really scary time.
Yeah, it was. And, when Eva was diagnosed, Kaleido had just been reimbursed here for people with G551D. And I remember taking that as a sign of hope when I saw it in the news. I was like, no, okay, that's somebody sending you a reassurance sign that where you're at right now, things are going to improve. But obviously, I didn't really understand that much about the genetics at the beginning. And as I got into it and realized that, Eva wouldn't be eligible for that medication, nor was she eligible for the ones that were in research at the time, which, turned out to be or can be. It was worrying. And then obviously we were looking at the States and seeing how further ahead you were in terms of access to those medications, whereas we were having to fight for the funding here. And I'd be lying if I said the conversation about moving didn't come up here also. Even in terms of physio, and I know more about it now, but at the time I remember following so many things going on in the States and seeing the vests, and we didn't have anything like that. We were using PEP or back taps at the time because Eva was small, and kind of wondering, if we moved, would we get access to more things that would help her. So it doesn't surprise me that any generation before us again would absolutely have considered leaving. Thankfully, it's not like that anymore. And I suppose the best thing, and we've kind of straddled one foot in both sides of it, I suppose, having had a wait and the worry at the start about access to medication versus having access to it now. So we've seen both sides of the story in Ireland. But now I think any families who are having children with CF, won't have those same concerns, that they won't have access. There's a contract in place now for rollout of Kaftrio that's pretty solid. We got kind of caught out in that Eva wasn't eligible for or can be. So even though we campaigned for access, the deal that was done didn't include expansion of, so it included the next set of medications. So it included access to Kaftrio, but only for those that were already accessing or can be. So we were in that wider circle whereby we were going to be eligible for Kaftrio, but hadn't been for our Cambi because Eva's a single delta. And then we had to fight again to get access. And it was exhausting. Like, there was a period of time here between 2017 and 2022 where you were just like, oh my God, do we really have to go to the press and tell our story again and go and campaign outside government buildings again? And, it was exhausting and demoralizing, and nobody wants to be out there airing the worst of their mental health and the worst of the illness that their child is going through to get access to medications that are going to change lives. So the situation now is that, for instance, in the last week, the rollout for children aged 2 to 5 has started with Kaftrio. So that's amazing. And there was no fight for that. That just happened as it should. Once the contract was done, it was now tightened up, and that rolled out to those children, to the best of my knowledge, without any issues. So that's really exciting. And to think that, and I think Kaleido the other day it was said to become available to babies even younger, I think from 4 weeks. So, the time to access these medications is getting shorter and shorter here, and that's phenomenal. Bearing in mind, obviously, we still have the 10% of patients who aren't eligible, and we can never forget them, and we have to keep pushing for some kind of solutions for them. But as regards being born into this country at this time, we do have access to everything that we need, bar better inpatient facilities, but they are coming.
And we, the United States and Ireland, we're doing so much better than other countries, obviously in the Middle East and other areas too. Remind me what your population is in Ireland.
So our population in the country, I think, could be up near 6 million at the moment, but we have the highest incidence of CF per head of population in the world. So here, 1 in 19 people actually carry the CF gene, which is incredibly high. So I think per head of population, we have 3 times the amount of the United States. So it feels very much like an Irish condition in a lot of ways. There are a lot of Celtic genes, and we tend to get the more severe genes here as well. I suppose due to a history of a smaller population whereby the genes have been shared around, we tend to have a lot of the more severe genes. I kind of think over time, obviously, Ireland has become much more multicultural in the last 20, 30 years, and maybe that will change the carrier status as time goes on. But currently it stands at 1 in 19, which is really, really high.
And you're talking about, like, there's 10 million people in the United States that carry the gene, but you're not talking about people with cystic fibrosis. We have 40,000 in the United States.
Yeah.
And how many in Ireland?
That's what I jotted it down earlier. I come up, I think it's about 1,400. So the number is...
That sounds right.
Yeah, I think it's about 1,500. So the number sounds quite low, but per head of population, percentage wise, is actually quite high. So we've 1 in 19 people carry the gene, and there are about 33 new cases diagnosed every year in the country. But the best stat I came across when just having a look over kind of how things have updated is that we now have 60% of the CF population is aged 18 or over, which is a huge sign of how things are improving, in terms of length of life. Because previously, it was mostly children due to people not surviving that long. So to have 60% aged 18 plus, just I suppose shows how far we've come in the last decade in particular in this country, and it's continuously improving. So it is a story of hope, and the story with each chapter, I suppose, is getting that bit brighter and brighter, which is wonderful.
It is wonderful. And I think that this was something that we talked about before, but I remember 29 years ago when our oldest was diagnosed and they said to us, Joe is Irish Catholic and I'm Ashkenazi Jewish and Eastern European. It's where the CF genes came from. And so we were learning about that. Although we've since found out it is not a white disease. It's never been a white disease.
Sure.
People of color and anybody can have cystic fibrosis. But you're also with CF Ireland. You do a lot being a CF mom and an advocate. What are you working on now? We see the purple rose on your
Yeah.
jacket. So how are things going now?
Yeah, good. I mean, the purple rose is on the jacket because today is actually 65 Roses Day in Ireland, which is our national awareness and fundraising day. So it seems really appropriate that we're having a chat today of all days when CF is front of mind across the country. There's a lot of people out today selling purple roses or CF pens or those coins for the trolleys, all branded with CF Ireland, and it is a cause very close to a lot of hearts in this country because of how prevalent it is. And there was a nice moment this week where we had a new Taoiseach elected, so a new leader, and Simon Harris is his name, and he was the Minister for Health at the time that we got approval for or can be. And then he was elected Taoiseach this week on 65 Roses Awareness Week, and he wore his purple rose when he was being appointed the role, which was a beautiful story, or it was beautiful for all of us in the community looking on to see that's how much supporting CF means in this country. And it was just nice, that kind of full circle of that story of the Minister for Health who kind of fought with us for access to these modulators is now leading the country. So that's gorgeous as well.
What do you think about, how CF is for other families around the world? We talked, about discrepancies for people around the world in regard to cystic fibrosis.
Yeah, I think it's a challenge because we've all gone on our own journeys and we've now reached a point where life is easier, and managing CF on a day-to-day basis it's a lot more doable than it was. And it would be easy, I suppose, to just go, that's great, we've made it, we have a good shot at the future, and just stop at that. But it's really important to remember and to open your eyes to the rest of the world that we are the lucky ones, and you are at the mercy of what country you're born into in terms of what medication is available, what consultants are available, and also you're at the mercy of your genetics, which you can't control, which genes you have and whether they're severe ones or mild ones. So I think that while it's wonderful that there are all these stories of hope and stories of lives that have been completely changed, in Ireland, in the US, in the UK, in any country that has access to all of the medications that are required, it's just important to remind ourselves that that's not standard across the globe, and to make sure that we continue to stand up for people with CF in other countries that aren't so lucky, and support them, and raise awareness as much as we can, to try and help them get to this stage, because every life with CF is worth as much as the next. So we just have to, while it's important to enjoy the better days, make sure that we're standing up for those that don't have them yet, and to make sure it's a yet and not that they're never going to get there. So it's just important, especially in this era of social media where we are so globally connected, to do what we can in terms of advocacy to work with those who need to kind of fight for better healthcare.
Absolutely. And what is life like with and for Eva now?
So life is completely different for Eva now. It's like she's a totally different child since starting CAF Trio. Um, I mean, before we started, you had this massive hope from hearing other stories, you know, double deltas, parents who had children with double delta who were on or can be, and subsequently CAF Trio, and you heard it about the incredible improvements and you hoped for it, but you still always had that fear, what if, you know, because Eva is definitely on the severe end of the spectrum when not treated with a modulator. Like her lungs are incredibly touchy. So you worried, you know, will the same happen for us? And you feared that you'd be one of the patients who struggled maybe with side effects, because, you know, we've all heard those stories in terms of the liver not coping or perhaps mental health being affected. So you had hope, but obviously that worry that what if it wasn't for her. But she leads a completely different life now than she did. Um, I kind of describe it as the risk benefit analysis of everything has completely shifted, because it used to take absolutely nothing to send her under. So you went into hyper protective mode. I mean, to the extent that it's possibly damaging when you're that overprotective and you're really aware of that, but at the same time, you don't want to walk your child into any illness or into any, you know, into any respiratory virus that's going to land her in hospital, which is what always happened. We were afraid to go swimming. Like, we were afraid of everything. And it wasn't that we'd built it up to be something worse than it was. She just was really susceptible and spent a lot of time in hospital, a lot of time off school, sick, steroids, IVs. You know, it was just, there was times she was on maybe 7 nebulizers a day trying to get an infection to pass. And it
Wow.
was really draining. And she's this beautiful, sociable child, and all she wants to do is be out in the world. Like, that's her way, which is gorgeous. And so it just felt really wrong, you know, how much we nearly had to hold her back. Whereas now, you know, it's not that she's bulletproof. She's not. She can still get sick. She got sick in January, and that gave us a reminder. But, you know, there's nothing obvious about her in a group of children anymore that screams there's something different about me. She is able to take part in PE. She plays Gaelic football. She goes swimming. I call her Nemo now. Like, she went from her not being allowed near the water due to all the pseudomonas fear to, oh my God, she absolutely flies up and down the pool. So it's really like we're still pinching ourselves at the incredible difference that it has made. And you kind of think back to the fight for funding and just go, oh wow, like every second of it was so worth it, because it's a total game changer and a total life changer, not just for Eva and our, but for the whole family. Like, mentally, we're all just so much more stable and positive, and it does affect the dynamics within the family overall. So everybody has hugely benefited from this new life that she lives. And I just look at her now, she's like a blossoming flower. Like, she can just do whatever she wants. And I think about her future now with a smile on my face, whereas I used to be afraid to think about it. So it's a mind-blowing difference. It's really hard to quantify quite how extreme life is now versus what it was before.
And such a difference,
Yeah.
right? I mean, and even for Danny, her sibling who doesn't have CF, like you were saying, it changes all those dynamics in the
Yeah,
family.
totally. Like, I used to find that he was quite weighed down. You know, they were in school together, and he was worried when she started school. I suppose, you know, she was used to being around, you know, me all the time, or us. There was always one of us there. But when he was at school with her and he was the only one from the family, I think he felt a little bit of a weight of responsibility to look out for her in those early days when she did really struggle. Whereas he's also a different child now, not just her. Like, he's lighter, he forgets sometimes. I think I may have said to you previously that one time, I think we were on holidays or something, she was doing her nebulizer and he says to me, does she still do them? Like he just had nearly forgotten it existed, which was amazing. And like, she still does one every day, even when she's well, as a preventative. But it was amazing to me that he nearly didn't realize that she did, or how little we obviously talk about it, or how little energy goes towards that in the house now. We do what we need to do, and when all is well, that's enough. We're not fixated on it anymore. You know, we do our business, we do our regime, and we get on with our lives. And there's very few things that even A can't do. So to think that someone in the house is nearly forgetting about it is, you know, mind blowing.
That is mind blowing. And what are your hopes for the future? Like, what else do you want to see? I know we all want to see the 10%
Yeah.
that they have a medication,
Yeah. I
but
mean,
what else?
that's definitely the main thing. And God, what else? I just as to just try and ripple this further across the world, because it does feel like, just depending on your luck or misfortune of where you were born, the story of CF is so different depending on that. You know, it's different depending on your genetics, and it's different depending on what country you're born into. And I think those of us that are lucky enough to access these medicines now, and while it's wonderful to enjoy them and appreciate your new life, it's important not to forget what it was like before that, and that other people are still in that situation. So I think we need to do our best to support other countries, and put pressure on other governments, and perhaps pressure on Vertex to lower their prices. Like, there's lots we can still be doing to try and to bring this new reality, I suppose, to more people. So the hope is for continued advocacy, and to see that positive story spread further around the globe, on a bigger scale. And then I suppose on a personal scale, I just want to see what Eva wants to do. Like, I now feel like she can do whatever she wants, and I'm just enjoying watching her grow into her own interests. And I now look forward to her going to secondary school and college, things that I used to just fear, because she would be exposed to more and more people, and what would the impact of that be, and would she be able for it. So now it's just watching her blossom is a gift, you know.
That is wonderful. Back to Eva. So does she have plans for what she wants to do yet? I mean, she's still so young. What does she want to see where her future
I
goes?
don't know that she knows yet what she wants to do, but what I do know is that she's not closing down her options. You know, she as I said, she's quite sporty. She plays Gaelic football. She also loves drama. She goes to a speech and drama class once a week, and she absolutely adores that, and that's been really excellent for her confidence. You know, she's well able to speak up for herself. She is now her own advocate, and that's also gorgeous to see. You know, we spend so much time speaking for our children when they're younger. I love seeing that she has the confidence now to say, I need to ask you to stop doing that, because that's dangerous for me. And she will do that at school if somebody is doing something that, you know, isn't okay. And I love to see that. But I don't know that she knows yet what she wants to do, but she loves writing and reading, and loves her drama.
Mm.
So I wouldn't be surprised if she followed something hopefully better than me in terms of writing. But she spends most of her free time writing stories. So I kind of hope or think she might grow in that direction. I think she'd like to be an author. So that would be amazing if that happened for her. But she's really naturally gifted with words. Her vocabulary is very impressive for her age. So I think that's kind of her natural love.
And very similar to you, I have to say, just from what I know of you. And she 11
She's
now?
11 now. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
She's 11, so
Wow.
she's at a super age. She's great company. She's great fun, and you know, we go lots of places together, and it's we have a gorgeous relationship, which I really really treasure. So long may that continue. The other thing that happened, actually, sorry, jumping back to a topic we were talking
Sure.
about earlier in terms of Ireland, we also, one thing that had been campaigned for here was a change in the organ donation approach. So previously here it was opt in. So you had to carry a card or pass on your wishes that you were an organ donor. Now we've reversed it just as of February this year, with a new bill that it's opt out. So it will be assumed that you are a willing organ donor unless you opt out, which is obviously huge for, you know, CF and lots of other conditions, that it should bring more donors into the system. So that's the other achievement that we've had here in recent times, which I think is an excellent one. I'm not sure what way it works in other countries, but that's a huge step forward here.
Yeah, I've heard that in a couple countries. It's not the way it works in the
Okay.
United States. You have to opt
In.
in and you have to put it on your driver's
Yeah.
license, I mean in your legal paperwork too, but yeah, I like the opting out better
Yeah.
for the reasons you just mentioned because people either forget to do it or they don't want to check it, you know, and I think it's more efficient if you have to opt out.
Exactly.
So maybe that's something we need to change that
Yeah,
here.
yeah, there was a lot of campaigning done here for it, and we thought it was going to happen sooner than it did, but it was finally signed by the president in, I think, February of this year. So it's a new enough thing. There had been it was due to, I think, be signed into law sooner, but has finally happened. And we'd some huge campaigning going on from. Or Orla Tinsley is a huge advocate here in Ireland, and Gillian McNulty and various other patients who have required transplants of their own, and spent a lot of time and energy pushing towards this to happen for the benefit of other people. And I think sometimes people just forget. So it is good, or maybe if somebody passes away unexpectedly, that their family don't know their wishes if it hasn't come up. So I think opt out is wonderful, because if you feel strongly about it and don't want to do it, that's okay. You don't have to do it, but it's just nicer to flip it, that the percentages are towards organ donation to start with. So that's something I think we're quite proud of changing here.
Yeah, and I have to say, I met Jillian in
Oh,
person
Gillian's wonderful.
when we were fighting for the opportunity for
Yeah,
Orkambi.
yeah.
So, yeah, so it's
She
wonderful.
has endless energy for campaigning.
She
She's a
does.
wonder. She's brilliant.
She is. And how are you and Dave doing? I talk a lot about mental health with every parent that I'm interviewing. How does, CF, I guess maybe even before or 8 years ago and now, how is that going for both of you in regards to CF?
Yeah, I think it's all much easier now, for sure. I mean, I struggled hugely for several years after Eva was diagnosed, from a mental health point of view, and probably didn't realize quite how affected I was at the time. I kind of threw myself into things as a way of dealing with it, or as a distraction, or just somewhere to channel the energy and the frustration. I think, did a lot of fundraising in the early days and met a lot of people. And myself and my husband probably had different approaches. He probably more wanted to get on with his day to day and not focus on it so much. And I seemed to throw myself head first into the community and into fundraising. We did cope with it in different ways. But I look back and I feel like I nearly don't remember Eva's first year or two. Like, CF was such a fixation, and it was all around the care and the fear and the difference that it was going to make, and how to cope with that. That I don't really think I ever got to just sit back and enjoy her baby stage. I was just always in fight or flight mode. I don't think I relaxed at all for years. So, and it's only when you kind of come through the other side of that, I think, that you can even look back and see it, or admit how not okay you were, and how that's also okay, that it's kind of
Right.
normal. But I suppose to newer parents now, you just kind of want to remind them to enjoy their baby for being a baby, and to enjoy all the precious moments. And CF has a way of taking over, but to try and not let it, or to try and be present, I guess. Which is hard work and hard to do. The one benefit we do have here is that, because it's a while we've the highest incidence, it is still a small community numbers wise, and I found that the kind of best support for both of us, really. I would drag Dave along to conferences and stuff like that in the early days, but like, he was grateful for it in the end, and that he also got to meet some CF dads and become friends with them, and maybe didn't realize that that was needed. But it is great when you make that connection. But that CF community here is so strong, and people are so willing and giving and supportive, that having that group of moms in particular, I suppose, for me to reach out to when things are going wrong, or when you're just not coping, there's always somebody who's gone through the same thing. But aside from that, even if they haven't, people are just so generous with their time for other CF parents, and just there's always somebody to talk to. Um, and that was a real saving grace for me in the early days. And I suppose lucky enough that, you know, there were a lot of groups, not a lot of groups, there was one particular group on Facebook of CF moms from Ireland. And I don't know how people coped in the past when they didn't have those online networks, because our generation has definitely benefited from that, whereby you can make those friendships, and communicate, daily if necessary, online, and make very solid friendships and meet up at conferences and stuff like that, for real, of course. But to just have access to those people, when you're going through a tough time, makes things a lot more bearable. So yeah, the CF community here is very, very special, and it's tight. It's people are close.
Right. And I was going to say, and this is one thing I keep saying is you're in Ireland, I'm here in the US, but wherever the parents are, we have like a sisterhood,
Yeah,
right? Or a brotherhood in
absolutely.
CF if you're a CF dad, but because we can all relate.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember actually in the early days, I was also part of a group, of moms who just, we had our babies at the same time, and I was within that group. And at the start, I was actually a little bit reluctant to. I think one of them said to me in one message at one point, I was struggling with something. Have you not got any other CF parents to talk to? They might be able to help you more. And I actually kind of took offense because I wanted Eva to be normal, and I didn't want to be like not in that gang because we had other things to deal with. And it feels a bit silly now looking back, because obviously I did need the support of parents who could understand what I was going through. But I suppose there was a real conflict there, whereby I still wanted to be part of this regular group, and I felt like, oh, hang on, I don't know, I just didn't know how to quite deal with it. Or it was like, if I went to speak to the CF group, that I was like, I don't know, just admitting something different. I don't know. I struggled mentally with that. And over time, obviously, you develop your friendships with both groups, and you get different things out of different supports out of those different groups, and you're kind of blessed to have both. I also kind of found along the way that by being a CF parent, even if you don't understand and every family has something they go through. We're not the only ones. Ours is CF. Other people have different things. Everybody has some kind of challenge that they go through. But I just find that CF parents are so empathetic and caring. And I think that's because we obviously understand firsthand those kind of emotional challenges that go along with CF parenting. And even if somebody is struggling from something completely unrelated that we don't understand, I just find we're usually very, very willing to be a shoulder to cry on, even though we have our own stuff going on, because we understand how important it is, or how much we appreciate it when other people were there for us, if that makes sense. So I
Yeah.
find CF parents are really giving of their time, even if they might be stretched for time, because they understand how important support is, and really want to be that for other people who need it, be it for similar or completely different reasons.
Well, and thank you. Thank you for continuing to share your story every time I ask. I really appreciate it. And we have such a time difference between the US and Ireland. So I appreciate that as well. Anything you wanted to end this CF masterclass with, words of wisdom from you, about now or anything going forward?
I would just say to other families to just, we're all dealt different cards, and CF is such a spectrum, and there'll always be somebody better off and somebody worse off on that spectrum. To just try to be present and do your best, and don't beat yourself up when it's not going well, because all we can do is our best, and sometimes that's more than enough, and other times challenges are thrown to try and knock us over. So to just, be kind to yourselves and look out for each other. It's not easy, but the future is hugely, hugely bright and hopeful. And to just enjoy your children. They're children first.
Wise words and a beautiful way to end this masterclass. So thank you,
No
Bernie.
problem. Thanks for having me, Laura. I really appreciate it.